So Ask Robin Black. We move along. Ask Robin Black episode maybe, what, 20? Who knows?
Yeah, probably.
Maybe 20, something like that. Who knows? Mark will have it labeled. If you look at it, it says 17. Well, I was wrong. Thank you very much for hanging with me. Ask Robin Black. People just send me questions and point me down rabbit holes, point me in the direction of a hole, and say, go down there. And then I do. And it's fun. And I love it. We've got some questions about Connor. Some of those I will move to the last segment of today. We'll talk about Khabib and Connor and the mental game. And we're labeling that, or we're calling that segment Mentality of Combat Sports. That's just because we don't have another segment name called The Intangibles of Combat Sports, because it's really about intangibles. Got a couple questions about Connor, about general martial arts, weight classes. Let's maybe start with one. Mark, I'm going to give you this list of questions after so you can label them, but they're not in any particular order. But I'm going to start with two that we just got off of Instagram and Periscope as we were chatting with people. One is from @613_shifty. What's the best left hook ever landed in MMA? And I liked that question because I liked its beautiful simplicity. I hate that question also because it's subjective. But what's the best anything ever? I mean, if you say to somebody, what's the best meal you've ever had? Mark, what's the best meal you've ever had?
I can't remember.
He doesn't remember. But I'll tell you one thing. If you could remember, it would be somewhere in the last 2 months, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to come up with something from 7 years ago.
No.
That's how our brains work, right? That's how our brains work. Nobody's like, oh, man, back in 98?
It's funny because when you did mention that, the first thing that came to mind was that Chinese restaurant we went to in Calgary.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it was good. But it wasn't the best meal you've ever had, but it was recent,
it was
right?
Super recent.
So we do that a lot. Who's the GOAT? Although that's a separate question. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But the GOAT, which is, of course, greatest of all time, GOAT, is often somebody very recent because the level of skill, knowledge, awareness, understanding, it advances. But best left hook ever landed in MMA. Question popped up. A couple came to mind. Mark and I were blabbing about it on Periscope or Instagram or wherever we were chatting with people live. And a couple came to mind immediately. One quick that is meaningful is Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping, Luke Rockhold. Mm-hmm. Bisping coming forward, steps outside Luke's. Luke throws a right hook from southpaw, and he's got a shifty game. Like it really is. That Luke Rockhold right hand, and you know, people got real horny for the term check hook, which is sort of a slang term. You check the chin with it. You know, it isn't a fully defined concept, or 3 different boxing coaches will define it in 3 different ways, but sort of a little slam, a little, slip outside. Often it steps outside and lands, but Luke also lands it from the inside over top. So it's not always what some coaches would call a check hook, but that's irrelevant. That these arguing over the word is not as important as marveling at the movement, right? So Luke has this beautiful right hand forward hooking punch that he lands in a multitude of different ways. And Mike and his coach, Perillo, who I only met after Mike lost. Well, I've met him a few times, but I only got to hang out with him over whiskey kind of thing. After Mike lost to George, I went to Mike's after party in New York. And we chatted a little more there. He's clearly a brilliant coach. And Mike was actually in Toronto when that fight came up.
Yep, he was training.
And he was training with a guy named Jorge.
Who ended up in GSP's corner that fight.
Yes, that's right. Jorge...
Blanco.
Sorry, Jorge. Jorge is a brilliant coach, not super accessible because he's very high level. Guy like that, he has, I believe, another career as well. But a guy like that... He did offer to train me, do some privates with me, so I'm very thankful. I hope I get to take him up on that at some point. But mostly he trains highest level people. So unless I don't know how accessible he is, although he has taught at a place called Open Mat here in Toronto at different times. But mostly he concentrates on the highest level of fighters. And there was footage of Mike training with Jorge at Open Mat in Toronto, and he was throwing that combination. So Perillo will definitely deserve some credit for helping develop Mike, but so does Jorge Blanco. Incidentally, I ended up going and taking Mike's place to commentate Shooto Brazil. Mike was booked to commentate Shooto Brazil that week, and I left my fucking vacation in the middle of I was in Mexico and left. So this is a meandering tale about left hooks. So Mike, of course, that's a meaningful punch. And as he's stepping with the left foot while he throws the right hand to the sternum to get the outside line, and this will not be a perfect example, but often you disguise a step with a punch. See? So this foot, I want to step out to a new angle. And this is an old school thing, but you see TJ Dillashaw does so much of that because Dwayne is a fucking genius. But the step out like this. So if I just step here, and I know this isn't perfect sound right now, and I know if you're listening on podcast, I'm stepping my left foot out off the straight line. So if I just step my left foot outside of your right foot, people talk about lead foot dominance, which conversation for another day, but it's an oversimplified bunch of nonsense for the most part. But if I step it out there, you see it, you react to it. But if I throw a hand up in there, just as it's happening, your brain has to focus and process that. And there's sometimes 2, 3, 4 other things I'll do. Just drop a shoulder, fake something. Puts the right fist on the sternum to measure the distance as he steps his left hand outside of Luke's sort of protective zone, and then comes in over top and lands it on his chin. So for a great, one of the greats, the true greats like Michael Bisping, to win his title, to knock out a guy who beat him before, to have an emotional and brilliant moment for him, to have that last stretch of his career be as a champion, that's about as meaningful. And it's barely, in a lot of ways, you don't even call that a left hook. It's, it's just sort of an arcing straight left from a different angle. I guess it's a scooping kind of, cuffing hook. So that's one. Dan Hardy has broken down when he gets hit by Carlos Condit, Dan's a fucking great guy. He's a really great guy. Martial arts, man, you lose. You lose sometimes. John Kavanaugh made famous the title Win or Learn. I think if he had it to do over again, it would be win and learn or learn, because winning you're supposed to learn as well. It's not an either or. But losses are the really important part of your life, of growth, of where you're going. There was an amazing quote I saw today from Robert Greene, who wrote a book called Mastery. Freddie Roach is it's a fucking amazing book. If I recommended another book today, but if you get a chance to read Mastery, it's one of my favorite books I've ever read. Robert Greene, I'm just pulling it up. Robert Greene, it was the greatest battle. Your past successes are your biggest obstacle. Every battle, every war is different, and you cannot assume that what worked before will work today. So no loss is what allows you to often see that. Loss is what allows you to go, oh, wait, that didn't work. So Dan Hardy was hit by Carlos Condit. We've seen many hook versus hooks. That's just a very famous one. And in some ways, and so that's an amazing left hook as Carlos. And those are two of my favorites, Dan and Carlos, both as personal, as humans and as fighters, two of my very favorites. But when those two things hit, another moment the other way, weight shifted slightly differently. Somebody starting earlier or later, and it's the opposite.
Yeah. That's
the beauty of that. Does that mean that Carlos Condit has a better hook? No. Does that mean that, Carlos's power was over Dan's chin? No. Does that mean Carlos's chin is better than Dan's chin? Carlos's power is... No. Some moments. The beauty of that moment, you can go see it. And the reason I mentioned Dan is because Dan will tell you to go see it. He's analyzed it, talked about it, because that's what he's a martial artist. Once upon a time, when you watched Dan Hardy in the early days and he had a shtick and a character and he was sort of a badass kind of thing, that's an element of him. You can see it. But I think it was more performance than anything. I think as a martial artist, and listen, Dan and I are still planning to do a podcast together on Brendan Schaub's network. Fucking life is so busy for everybody. Brendan most of all. And then Chin, who will work with Mark on it. And Dan is like, yeah, mate, I'm in. So we just got to do it. But
I think, to be honest, it might start in January because that's when Brandon's moving to his new studio.
Yeah.
And he's setting up his network then. So
cool.
I have a feeling like we'll get everything up and running.
I will text Chin right after this podcast and just say, hey, let's target January for, Black and Hardy podcast, and we'll loop Mark in. So we'll be working on it. But Dan talks about that moment too. But the beauty of that moment is the truth of it. And the truth is not, again, he hits harder or he takes it better. It's just moments. It's, slightly faster, slightly slower, slightly more tired or slightly less tired. Any of hundreds of variables. That's the beauty of that left hook there. And then, what was that one we saw in Winnipeg?
Ooh, Josh Emmett and Ricardo Lamas.
Josh Emmett knocked out Ricardo Lamas. That's actually similar, wasn't it? Hook versus hook.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Or maybe.
I think no.
Yeah. I think
so.
Lamas was throwing a right hand. Maybe I can't remember.
Yeah.
But that's a fuck of a hook. Again, that's like the most recent meal we had. Like we were there, and it was a big hook. And Lamas, I'm sure, looks at that and is like, man, I've laid out some guys too. It's part of it. It's a part of it. But it was a good one. And then I really, really, really like Frankie Edgar, Chad Mendes.
Right.
That's a pretty, and I was there for that one too. So, a lot of them, it's what's the best? That's really up to interpretation. There's no best. There's no best left hook. Each one is different. What's the best snowflake? What's the best raspberry in a thing of raspberries? And, if you had 40 sexual partners in your life, I'd say, well, what was the best sex you ever had? You're not going to, it'll be whatever the most recent one was, because that's how our brains work. You're not going to have had sex this morning and go, yeah, I remember that one back in 2006. Like, that's life, man. Food, entertainment, happiness, fights, mating, all the things that people do. Friendship, laughter. What's the best one? I don't know. But
I think the only time that doesn't apply is music.
Yeah, what's the best? Who's the best singer?
Yeah, it's always usually older.
Yeah, that's true. It's a really good point. Yeah, there's a point at which, for some reason, things don't get better forever. And they certainly don't get better linear forever. There may be better music one day, but the general... there may be better paintings, but we're not all sitting there freaking out about some painting from 1973. Mm-hmm. We're freaking out about the top of the Sistine Chapel, or we're freaking out about the Mona Lisa. So it's not a linear thing. But so best, I don't know. But there's a lot of good ones. But people, if you're so inclined, please leave us a message or hit me up on Twitter. Tell me what the best left hook that you ever saw was. Let's do some other ones. Elvis Thomas 8. What are your thoughts on rankings? So I'm going to be, just about said a lie. I was about to say, I'm going to be kind of quick on this, but I'm never quick on any of these things. Rankings. So what are they? And what were they? So regardless of how you create rankings, now TKO, it's an organization I commentate for. They're on Fight Pass. TKO 44 is September 21st on Fight Pass. Great show. Best show in the history of Canada. They have it's TKOMMA.ca, I believe, is their website. They have a ranking system that they have developed because it's something that's a priority to them based on wins versus other ranked guys, how you won, finishes, time of finish, knockout, all of it has scores. And those scores were developed over a long period of time to represent best that they can the truth. So the number one ranked guy has, based on these criteria, it's not subjective. It's not like, what's the best raspberry you've ever had? It's like, here is the criteria, and there's the rankings. UFC, it's a bunch of journalists. It doesn't take much to get on that list. And they say, usually whoever won last week jumps a lot more than whoever won 3 weeks ago, no matter how those two things compare. That's just human nature. I used to call journalists tomato cans because tomato can is a term for, like lower level boxers. And I've softened on that. I've tried to become a slightly kinder person over time. It's the least we can try to accomplish in our lives. But to factually speaking, a very large percentage of people who cover UFC have no actual intimate knowledge of fighting whatsoever. And that's no different than people who cover football or music. Now, some music journalists, of course, were musicians, and the odd football journalist played football. But for the most part, watching a lot of fighting, but not really, doing it or physically understanding how the body works or whatever by first person, you don't know a great deal about fighting. But these are people who care, and they do the best job that they can. So they rank it. So regardless of how we achieve this ranking, what are they? What is rankings? So if we go back 20 years or 30 years in boxing or any other sport that has rankings, wins and losses over whoever on the way up achieves the ranking. The number one, the first, what are your thoughts on rankings? You asked me this question 20 years ago. The number one guy will fight the champion. That's meaningful. That's meaningful, right? I mean, you can't bullshit that. Now, you can argue whether or not he should be one or he should be one. And the reason that those such debates and arguments and controversies were good was because this mechanism, the rankings, created what people who give a shit about this kind of stuff called engagement, right? If we were engaged, and you see it all the time, people on Twitter or whatever, Connor's going to win, no, Khabib's going to win, and they'll argue for days. Those guys are engaged. They're buying a fucking pay-per-view. That's what the machine cares about. The machine is trying to make you do something. Buy something, watch something, talk about something, share something, like something, engage with something. Their goal is to create action in you. So any type of debate is good for that machine, for that thing. So, but once upon a time, the rankings, number one guy would fight that meant something. We could argue about how he chose number one, but that meant something. Today, we all know that's not true. Right?
Yeah, the money fighter.
Yeah, I mean, it has nothing to do with it. The only reason that matters is if it happens to coincide with the most popular guy. Whoever is top 10-ish, based on this very loose criteria of people who don't have any intimate knowledge of fighting itself, making a arbitrary list and then putting that list there. If the guy who happens to be one or two also coincidentally happens to be the most popular, he will fight. But if the guy who's number 4 is the most popular or becomes the most popular in one big moment and says some crazy shit, like Cowboy Cerrone has always been favored and loved, but right now he's also like hot because he fucking talked about like the people at his team and, talks. Well, some people say talk some shit. Felt to me like he just told the truth as he saw it. What that is, his truth, not mine. It's none of my business. But things like that will actually get you that fight more than the 1 or the 2 or the 3. I mean, Mike Perry. We like Mike Perry, right?
Love Mike Perry.
Love Mike Perry. Can you, if you go on the thing, can you tell me what number he is in the rankings?
Yeah, let me check.
Like, Mark's going to look it up. I'm going to say he's like welterweight rankings, maybe like number 7 or 8. maybe higher. Although if he actually was not so interesting and exciting, he might be 10. But with that, he'll get a little extra flavor bump from the people who create the rankings, the people who rank that.
Mike Perry's unranked.
Mike Perry's unranked. Well, if Mike Perry, who's he fighting? Cowboy.
Cowboy, yeah.
So Mike Perry, if Mike Perry fucking somehow destroys Cowboy,
He's top 10 then. Without
not only
they'll make him top
he's number
10.
6
Or 6, yeah.
and he will fight for the title. And don't fucking think for a moment he won't, because the rankings don't matter. It's a mechanism to create debate or discussion or engagement to make you take some action. Tweet something, write something, click something, like something, buy something. It's there to make you do something. It's got nothing to do with anything. It's there to trick you. There's nobody evil trying to fucking do anything to you. This is just how our systems take shape, right? It doesn't mean anything. So what are my thoughts on rankings? There's my thoughts. There's no judgment. I'm not judging it. You can like them. You can be mad. Robin, what the fuck are you talking about? Rankings matter. They should. I mean, I think the guy who's the number 1 guy should fight the champion. But I'm not in control. If Mike Perry fucking destroys Cowboy Cerrone, says some crazy shit about Woodley or Till in particular, right?
Yep.
Maybe Till wins, right? We'll talk about that next after some more questions. Maybe he wins. And then he goes out and he says, I hate this fucking Mike Perry. Then Mike Perry lays out Cowboy and he says, Darren Till, let's do this in fucking London. That shit's happening. But wait, he's number 7. If he's unranked and he beats Cowboy, who is probably number 5.
Cowboy's 12, actually.
Cowboy's 12. So Cowboy's 12. He's unranked. He beats Cowboy somehow. He'll be 6. Guaranteed.
Something very similar happened to Darren Till when
Yeah.
he fought Cowboy.
Yeah, Darren Till. So Cowboy was 12. Darren Till was unranked. Or 10. Cowboy's
Something
maybe
of that
7.
nature, yeah. Cowboy
Darren
was a little
Till
bit higher.
beats him.
Yeah.
Is that it? Then he fought Wonder Boy, who was number 1.
Yeah, and now Till's
And
number
now
1.
he's there. Right?
The
So
last-
it's all just
yeah.
made up.
The last time the rankings actually mattered in a matchup was Wonder Boy versus Rory, because that was actually number 1, number
Yeah.
2, and the winner got the title fight. That was
Right.
the last time it actually mattered.
Last time that it was 1 versus 2 with the winner fights the title. Last time. That was in Ottawa, Ontario, like 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
I worked at Fight
That was
Network. Me
before
and
we met.
Randine were there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're meaningless, but that doesn't mean they're meaningless for their original purpose, which was the number 1 guy fights the thing. So that meaning is gone. Don't be mad at me. I'm not saying it should be gone. Neither am I supporting this. In fact, I don't have a dog in this fucking debate. So this has got nothing to do with me. It's an observation of the truth as I see it. This is not my judgment. That original meaning is now gone. So it's gone. So if it has some other meaning to you for your importance, or because you like to know that this guy's won and why the fuck isn't he fighting, you like to fight for that or champion that, don't let me stop you. And that's meaning for you. But for its original purpose, which was to give us an outline of who would fight next for the title, clearly that is over. It's been over for a long time. It's irrelevant. And that's that. I guess
I think
that's
it's more or less used now as a marketing tool for
Yeah.
the UFC. Like the number 4 guys
Yeah.
fighting number 3 guy. This is why you should tune in, as opposed to
Yeah.
so-and-so's fighting so-and-so, because they won't know where they rank.
Yeah,
The casual fans.
For some people that is more meaningful. But because the reason that there's 2 belts in most divisions now is because the number 4 ranked guy versus the number 6 ranked guy doesn't necessarily get anybody jazzed. But for the middleweight interim UFC title, they figure that gets people jazzed. I don't think it actually does. I think this is my belief. It's harder work to show people the inherent incredible nature of fighting itself. That's harder work. I started that 10 years ago doing that. And the small amounts, you guys, you know it. You see it. It took a long time. Now, I don't have the giant platform to do it. One day, bigger platforms at different times. TSN's big platform, different places. but it's a lot of work. But people are attached for life. The number 7 versus number 3 guy, nobody gives a fuck about 7 or 3. Holy shit, those guys are fighting. Look how skilled they are. Look how special they are. Look how unique they are. This is once in a lifetime. We don't have to be told once in a lifetime or a winner gets a title shot or inherently. Stephen Till versus Tyron Woodley is an incredible moment. 2 very special combat sportsmen who have dedicated their lives to this will now fight. That is inherently brilliant. That's hard work to teach, and we've wasted a lot of time not doing that. But that's the way. It isn't the number 3 guy versus the number 1 with a title shot on the line for the interim something. If anybody thinks that's what's selling this shit, they're old and tired, and they're fucking hanging on to old concepts. They're not thinking about what young people, what the Instagram generation, what the YouTube generation, what the digital people, what the AI and the 3D and all of these people who are living in this world. They don't care about things like that. I know it matters to some, and it should, and don't get rid of it. But that's not your primary marketing. If the numbers drop or engagement drops or, the connection of the audience drops and you keep doing the same thing, that's on you. Who am I talking to? Who's ever doing the same things, right? But anyways, rankings, they don't mean what they once meant, so they mean whatever you choose for them to mean. Belt, we're kind of getting to that point as well. Does that mean that I'm a hater? No. Because once you remove all that stuff and you just get right into it, who is this man and who is this man or this woman and this woman? Where'd they come from? What do they do? What do they mean? What do they dream of? What does this mean to them? What is this moment? What is their life led? Fuck, that's more special than any of these mechanisms.
And that's why I think Bellator is really on the mark with their Grand Prix that they're doing. Forget the rankings. Just get the best welterweights or heavyweights you can. Toss them at Grand Prix, see who wins. And that creates a storyline on its own.
Bellator is doing well with that. And then there's a small show popping up called MMA Pro League. And they're doing their first show at the Hard Rock in Atlantic City on September 5th. Shout out to Mark and the team over at MMA Pro League. They are creating a team structure as well, right? Now, does that, and some people are like, we tried that, we had IFL, there's debates around it, but you have attached some more meaning when it's all of us, the 4 or 5 of us, we're all together. We've got, I hope they do, and I'm sure there's probably a very good chance I'll contribute something to their broadcasts. If they ask me, we got cameras in that back room, and we're showing when my guy loses, how that affects the rest of us. We're a group, a team, a family, the same coach, the same people working together. Guy gets dragged on a stretcher. He's my friend and training partner, and I got to go back out. There's the us versus them element. There's something there. Is that the be-all, end-all? Is that going to be the answer? No. But is it meaningful? It can be. Yeah. There's more there. There's more there than 1 versus 2 winner gets a title shot for the interim, whatever.
And I'll also explore that concept, it's kind of like it's unanswered. Is MMA a team sport or is it an individual sport? Because it's 50-50.
Well, you go in there alone, but you got there with a team. You got there with people. Who's you fucking training with if not a team? I mean, of course, there are, individuals who train in different ways, but, I need partners. And those partners, we develop relationships. And there's a whole other thing. I don't get into the politics very often or very deeply. But the whole, Cowboy and his team thing, the issue with those things for me is not this guy talked shit about that guy who did that thing. The issue for me is that one of the things that Donald and Joe did talk about is these guys have been training with me. Excuse me. I'm gonna I just can't afford to have a cold now with Portland, then Montreal, and then Columbia travel next week. But my coaches and all of these guys, they've trained hundreds of rounds with me, many thousands of hours. They know so much about me, That's an aspect, but it's an unavoidable truth about it, When if we train together, and one day we both get to the top, and we both want to be the champion. And at any one, we can both be it at one time. Cormier and Kane have both been the heavyweight champion. They're friends. They're training partners. They did it together. They never had to fight. But if Kane comes back, which I don't know what's up with that, and he fights and has a couple of brilliant moments, and Dan's still the champion, maybe they do. Although they fucking fought each other hundreds of times with big mitts and
I also
headgear.
think, like, because of that, like, guys like Overeem really benefits from that nomad lifestyle where he'll go to the gym for a while, learn what he can, share techniques and all that, and then move on to another gym. That's why he's always evolving.
I haven't fought in 5 years or whatever, 4 or 5 years, and I'm too old now. But as a martial artist, because I travel a lot, I live sometimes here in Toronto, and my wife has a show in Stratford all year, so I'm there a lot. And I train Muay Thai there, and I train Muay Thai here today, here at Southside with Evan Boris, and there with Joe Tipping, Crew Joe out in Stratford. And I'll train jiu-jitsu over at Stratford BJJ, and then I'm going to be in Portland this weekend. I might go to Gracie Baja while I'm over there. On Monday, I'm going to train with Faraz Sahabi, I hope. And you learn so much as a martial artist by traveling. I mean, early on, when you're young, you need a leader because one coach will tell me that I stomp a particular way and turn my hip, and the other one will tell me to pivot that foot or drive the ball into the ground. And I need to know enough about martial arts, which later in your life you do, to know that they're both right, and they're just variations. And variations are good. And then you learn about what is a variation and it makes you think, well, what if I also do this? Now that you understand how the body moves and shifts and tightens and releases and the difference between relaxation and engagement, you can take all of those things and gather all these different knowledges from different people. And if you go and you learn, I trained Kung Fu in China, and it was fucking amazing. And that's not wrong, or Taekwondo isn't wrong, or Muay Thai isn't wrong. They're different. So it's really valuable.
Even doing karate with GSP's guys.
Yeah, I did karate with George St. Pierre and his guys. Amazing stuff. But was that about rankings? Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah,
okay.
Rankings.
Well, this is what we do here. So we're going to talk about one other thing which is related to this topic somewhat. Dan Moista. At Dan Moista. The game is evolving so quickly, it looks like the Thai clinch has all but disappeared at the pinnacle of competition. Is this your observation as well? The reason I went to that right now is because that does carry on to what we were just saying. I have a bunch of questions, and in typical Robin Black way, I'm taking a long time, so we won't get to all of them. But I went to that one because it carries on to what we were just talking about. So I just did a breakdown. It's on my Instagram at Robin Black MMA. By the time you hear this, it'll be one of the 3 or 4 on the front of it. And Manny Pacquiao draws out Ricky Hatton's left hand, and with his right hand, as Manny is throwing his hard, powerful left to Ricky's chin, Ricky is throwing a left jab, or throwing a punch with his front hand, and Manny just ever so gently catches it. You call it parry, call it what you like. It's just a word. But what happened is he just takes the force of it and ever so gently applies an outside pressure to just gently guide it past his face. As the punch is coming, he guides that past his face and drills his own in and puts him to sleep. That's Wing Chun. That's fucking Wing Chun. That's what that is. Right there. And that was pointed out to me by @ChinaBoy today, but I've been pretty obsessed with Wing Chun. I was talking about it and looking at it a lot when I did a seminar with Crew Jeff Harrison in Ottawa recently. Inside moving, redirecting, shaping, pushing, trapping, Wing Chun's been playing that game and perfecting some of these concepts for many hundreds of years. And it's amazing. And if I said that to maybe my friend Russ Amber or boxing expert, they wouldn't argue it. But to them, it's the history of that it'll have something to do with, a boxing history or inside fighting. They'll make the connection to their world, and they should, and we all do that. but it's just I'm just applying energy to a straight line. Something is coming in a straight line at me, and I apply energy, and it goes a different way. That's just simple redirection. All of these concepts are what they are. Now, I'm going to show video next week, and I'm going to explain it for the podcast people. I've figured out some strategies to explain it without video for them, and on YouTube we'll have video. But a lot of what I'm looking at is the idea that these concepts are not static. And when you ask me, the tie clinch has disappeared at the pinnacle of competition. 3 weeks from now, you and I would look at this and go, that's crazy. I've been seeing this for 3 weeks straight. Nothing but tie clinch. And nothing but something we identify as looking like a tie clinch that a tie fighter uses. It is not a tie clinch. When I stand in a wrestling stance, a Thai crew would say to me, that's wrong. Or he'd say, why don't we adjust this to make you stand up taller? Or why don't we adjust this to drive your hip in deeper? This is how we do it in Thailand. Well, as soon as we add, takedowns, wrestling, grappling, grabbing of the thighs and the hips, as soon as we add, all of these other elements, cage work and all of this stuff, it is no longer really a tie clinch. But the thing that we would see where a guy grabs the back of the head, drives his forearm into the collarbone, straightens up, and either with the second side or with only one, goes in there, takes control of the inside in whatever way he wants to, and then uses knees, elbows, punches, and so forth. That particular moment, that little structure, if we were to agree that that has disappeared right now, which I don't agree, but if we did, any good coach watching this would be like, holy fuck, people aren't using the tie clinch. That means they're not very good at it. That means they don't understand it. That means their training partners are doing it. That means it's become a modern, brief, temporary hole. Let's fucking start working on it. The moment that you see something disappear is the moment you should be doing it. If nobody's in that spot, it means that nobody's training in that spot. It's as if we've ignored that spot. And if we've ignored that spot, go there, because that means he's ignored it. If nobody's doing it, which is why the guard is so dangerous now. Because everybody believed the guard was irrelevant, so they trained as if the guard was irrelevant. And their training partners only trained to stand up. So the guard's super fucking dangerous now because people have atrophied in their ability to deal with the realities of an attacking submission guard. Muay Thai clinch is very same thing. You do see it against the fence. There's temporary moments of it, or using it in transition to a different grappling, to an underhook, to an overhook, to a go behind, to an arm drag. It's just used in combination with things now. But if taking control of somebody from that dominant position starts to disappear, you'll see more of it. So these things are temporary. Nothing will ever disappear. Nothing is wrong. There's nothing that a high-level, quality, talented martial artist who's athletic and knows how to use their body and knows how to control their body and is aware of their body, there's nothing they cannot do. And if people aren't doing it, somebody will start doing it. So I love that kind of thing. I just love that kind of thing. Let's do one or two more questions, and then let's move into mentality of combat and talk about Khabib versus Conor and some of the intangibles aspects of that. At Rawchild, RAWCHILDD, what do you think of Jon Jones at heavyweight? Would he be slower? We talked about this, Rawchild and I, a little bit on Periscope. Jon Jones would probably be faster. Jon Jones probably be faster at heavyweight. Now, somebody instinctively might be like, "Oh, that's wrong." No, that's right. Because Jon Jones at light heavyweight, so I'm using air quotes, like the two quotations in the air. Jon Jones at light heavyweight, on Friday morning he weighs 205, and on Saturday when he fights he weighs 230, maybe 232. Jon Jones, so bear with me again. Light heavyweight champion Jon Jones fights at 232 pounds. That's an approximation. Could be 228, but I'm going to say, let's say 230 for the sake of discussion. Jon Jones, light heavyweight, fights at 230 come fight time. Jon Jones, heavyweight, could fight at 230. I mean, why would he fucking change? Just fight at 230. That's heavyweight. It's a heavyweight. I mean, Cormier probably weighed, what, 235? He weighed actually more than we were expecting him to. I seem to recall it. I remember thinking, geez, he's kind of pudgy. Against Stipe.
It looked like he was ready for the permanent move to heavyweight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hey, it's nice. John would probably love it too. Let's say he weighs 235. He didn't... And so Jon Jones, light heavyweight, 230, 231, 232. Jon Jones, heavyweight, 235. Same guy. Same dude. Only difference is he didn't starve himself for a fucking week and then sit in a sauna and sit in a hot bath with Epsom salts and alcohol in it, etc. He's the same guy. Just didn't deplete himself. He'd be fucking faster. You know? He'd be faster. Did Cormier look any slower? Maybe. Cormier looked a little pudgy. No disrespect. That's the heavyweight champion of the world. Knocked out Stipe Miocic. Or Miocic, as Anik says. And Anik's always right when it comes to names. If you're ever in doubt, just hear Anik say it. He'll have it 100%. Yeah, so he'll be faster. That's that. Which is cool. Think of it. Imagine that. Same, only maybe even faster against heavyweights who could be not as fast. So while we're on that subject, this one makes sense to talk about. I think it's Jimbo Pitcher. Apologize if it's wrong, at Jimbo Pitcher. Do you think more weight classes will be introduced before someone dies making weight? We can connect that back to our thoughts on the rankings. Weight classes will only be there if it benefits the machine. That's just true of all machines. That's not true of all machines. Some modern machines shift their philosophy. And they're like, what is better for my audience? What is better for my consumer? How do I give the most value? Old machines are like, what's better for us? Truthfully, what's better for my audience is often better for you. Never mind what's better for my employees, what's better for my athletes. You feel like you got to do what's best for you, the machine, you, Nike, you, Apple, you, the UFC, you, McDonald's. The machine thinks it's got to do what's best for it, but what's best for it is to do what's best for the athletes and best for the audience. Because if you're doing that, you have a happy, engaged, delighted, supportive audience, consumers, employees, athletes. In the long run, you may actually do better. But old machines do that. I will take exception with something here. Do you think more weight classes will be introduced before someone dies making weight? I guess the only thing I don't think there will be a lot more weight classes unless the machine thinks it'll make them more money somehow. And I don't know if it does think that right now. Although I think, wouldn't a 165-pound belt and a 175-pound belt be more valuable than 270-pound belts? You know what I mean? Like if we called one the light welterweight and one the super welterweight or whatever the fuck you want to call it, you'd have two. And each guy would be a champion instead of two champions. So I think they might see that because it seems logical that two belts in two divisions is better than two belts in one division.
Yeah.
You know, but
I think it's because, like, I don't know if it's Dana White or not, but they just don't want it to be like boxing where it's oversaturated with belts.
But they also didn't want it to be like boxing where they had multiple belts for everything. Yeah. And they have that. So you can try that all you want, but you're already doing it. So it's just change is hard. They're caught in a loop of make the next thing, make it quick, fill the card, fill the staff, get it out there. That's what it is to scale something. Yeah. You know, it'll most likely happen if they do 165 and 175 because this is the only scenario where it'll happen if a bunch of 155ers miss weight, and that's the concentrated weight class where there's an issue, then they might have to do something. But here's the problem.
They won't.
The only way it'll be done is if it's monetarily good, because none of these problems will be solved by more weight classes. None of them. So a bunch of 55ers miss. Some of them will say, okay, I'll go to 65. Others will be like, fuck that, I want to fight smaller guys. You'd be like, well, we got a 55, a 65, a 75, and an 85, so we're going to have a lot less guys missing weight. No. And we got a 95. Darren Till wants to fight at 65 now. He's not going to say, okay, 75 it is. He's going to go, where do I have the biggest advantage? I mean, this isn't an issue of not enough weight classes. This is an issue of people. human mind looking for an advantage. Just because there's a 65 and a 55 doesn't mean that, what was that big guy? He got cut, big Brazilian guy that fought 23 times.
Oh, Gleison Tibau.
Gleison Tibau. At a 65-pound weight class, Gleison Tibau's still going to try to fight at 55. Nobody's going to tell him he can't, and if they try to tell him he can, he's going to fucking fight there because he thinks he has an advantage. He's not fighting at 55 at 185 pounds because there's no 65. He's doing it to gain an advantage. All athletes can become smaller. All athletes. And this one gets really all wound up when you start talking about Cyborg because people love to argue this thing. The Rock. Let's take The Rock. He's easy to understand. What do you think The Rock weighs? 250?
Probably 280.
Okay, The Rock weighs 275, let's say. I don't know what he weighs. Google The Rock meal plan. He eats fucking 7 meals a day. If you're like, oh man, could The Rock fight at 225? Fucking rights he could. He'd eat 3.5 meals a day. He'd consume less protein. He would become smaller. He would do more cardio. He would eat less. Fuck. Like, everyone can get smaller.
Best example right now, recently, Michael Johnson. He looks so different compared to 155, and that's just one weight class. And he just changed his diet, ate fish, vegetables.
Michael Johnson is a big guy who decided to become a smaller man. Everyone can do it. Cyborg becomes the big argument because it's been going on for a long time, and different types of experts have got involved in different ways, but for her to be that size and have that much muscle tissue, she must consume a ton of calories and protein. Failure to do so, she will lose size. So it isn't like you have to do some fancy ass fucking diet. You just have to not feed the size. You have to not force. Look at what The Rock eats, man. He's not eating that because he's hungry. He's eating that because that's what's required to stay that big. It's hard work to stay that big. These people, it doesn't take a lot of effort to go down a weight class. It takes a lowering of the amount of effort to stay that big. It's effort for these guys. Now, there are exceptions to it. Darren Till can, and we're going to move to that in just a second. Darren Till can become a smaller man. Diet and cardiovascular exercise. He doesn't want to. You don't think Darren Till could be a thinner man? Of course he could. He doesn't want to because he has an advantage by cutting. And this is another part that we misunderstand. There is weight management, weight loss, and weight cutting. And all of them always happen. And most of the time, we call them all weight cutting, but they're not all weight cutting. Weight cutting is the thing that takes place in the last phase. That's fight week. Why does this matter? Because weight cutting is temporary. Weight cutting is temporary. So if Darren Till's 190 and he cuts 20 pounds, when he fights, he'll be 190. Now, if Darren Till's 230, he will use weight loss to get to 190, then weight management to stay around there, and then the week of, he'll use weight cutting. Weight cutting is the final phase. I cut 20 pounds, I stand on the scales, then I rehydrate and add carbohydrates, and I regain that 20 pounds. That's why Darren Till will be 193 or 195 on fight night, because of the final phase. If we wanted Darren Till to walk around at 190 when he started training camp, we would reduce the amount of food and we would make him smaller to start. That's achieved through weight loss. Not weight cutting, weight loss. So this isn't some failure of some shortage of weight divisions or some, the day of this will happen no matter what we do. One championship in Singapore and in Asia, they have mastered it, but you have weights you must be at certain times, and if you're not, you'll be out, or you'll be forced to go up a weight class. So it isn't, the UFC weighs you, I think, when you get to town on Tuesday. And they're like, holy fuck, Darren Till, you're 192. One championship would have weighed him 6 weeks ago when he was 210. And they'd have said, no, you need to be 192 now. So they have solved it. But it's a long, costly, complicated process that they believe is worthwhile to protect the athletes and the integrity of the sport and safety. In this game, in North America, Bellator, the UFC, everywhere, all of them, it's left to your own devices till Tuesday. So how big you are can be a game you play to gain an advantage, and that's what they're doing. And even if there was a 165, a 175, a 185, people still be trying to fight at 155 or 145. You know, they would, because if Conor McGregor fought at 145, why wouldn't he fight there again? He fought at 170. How could he make 145? Hard work, sacrifice. And he did that to have a physical advantage, to go with his other advantages. And as a result, it made him incredibly dominant. And people would say, well, that's unfair. It's not unfair. You could do it. You could do it. They can all do it.
Diego Sanchez has been doing it since he started. Yeah. He started at 170.
Yeah, Diego Sanchez fought at 185. He fought at 205, I think.
Did he?
I think.
BJ Penn fought at 205.
BJ Penn fought at heavyweight.
Yeah, when he fought Machida.
What's his name? That's on Fox.
Kenny Florian.
Kenny.
Yeah.
Kenny fought at 85, and he fought at 45. So this is something in your control. You can do it. Michael Johnson is same size as Conor.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe bigger. You can do it. It's up to you. But you can't force these guys. You can't protect them from themselves, and you can't stop them from trying to use their own body. This is my body. It's my body. I can run and sit in saunas and go in hot tubs and diet and dehydrate. It's mine. You're going to try to stop me? I'm going to just lie to you. I'm going to say, oh, I'm good. No, I'm not dehydrated already on Tuesday. Now, one championship won't allow that because they do urine tests. They check for a particular amount of crystals or salt things or whatever. I'd have to look it up. I have looked it up before, and Rich Franklin explained it to me in a higher detail. I just haven't. There's a certain amount of crystals that exist in your urine when you're dehydrated, or a certain amount of read you can do. So they won't allow it. But that's cost. It costs them a shitload of money. But they know it's worth it because their philosophy is do what's best for our audience, do what's best for our athletes, do what's best for our employees. That's a corporate philosophy. The larger companies often don't have that philosophy. Their philosophies, and it can change over time, but their philosophies are often do what's best and do what's best for us. Do what's best for the bottom line. Do what's best for the coming week. Do what's best for the short term. That's how big companies survive. That can change. But as it is now, no, none of this will make any difference. Large scale change has to happen, and that's costly. And they're not in the business of spending money on shit like that right now when they're paying off debt and borrowed money. And that's just the nature of it. And it's not anybody's fault. That's not any judgment. That's just the reality.